Welcome to Cultimatum, a podcast diving into the culture of cults and human trafficking. I am your host, Anonymous Andrew.
And I'm Melody, joining Andrew as his co-host. Having experienced the depths of a cult firsthand, specifically the House of Yahweh, I'm here as an advocate for fellow survivors. I run the Cult Escape and Recovery Support Group on Facebook. We are committed to respecting our guests' privacy and allowing them to use fake names or remain anonymous. And Andrew, before we dive in, a trigger warning: some episodes may explore explicit subjects such as sexual abuse, rape, human trafficking, suicide, and other potentially disturbing topics.
Welcome to Cultimatum, the culture of cults. My name is Anonymous Andrew, and hi, Melody.
Hi, Andrew. How are you doing?
I'm doing better.
Good.
As the audience may or may not know, I had hip replacement surgery a week ago, so I'm recovering, but doing well. So What do we have on today's episode?
We have got Ari Sherwood, who actually did a previous interview with just Andrew. And I'm going to say again, I'm repeating myself because I say this right before we introduce her too, but it is for anybody who wants to go listen to it. If you want to listen before you listen to this episode to get a backstory. Episode number 8 was Ari's original interview, but she goes more in depth on this one. So we're going to let Ari go ahead. We're going to jump into that and let her tell the rest of her story that she wanted to come back on and share with the audience.
Absolutely. All right. We'll talk on the other side.
Yep.
Welcome to Cultimatum, the culture of cults. And my name is Anonymous Andrew, and with me I have Melody. Hi, Melody.
Hi, Andrew. Today we have Ari Sherwood again. Ari actually interviewed with us. Her episode number 8 is Ari's original interview with us, and she shares her story of marrying the leader of a small cult when she was only 20 years old, where she stayed until his death, which actually set her free. So if you want to hear that first part of her story, go listen to episode number 8 and you can get a little bit of an update. You might want to do that before you listen to this episode because it'll give you a little bit more background. But welcome, Ari. She's here
Agreed.
to share more of her story and dive a little deeper into some of the beliefs that this leader had and go a little bit more in depth on her story. Welcome, Ari.
Hi, thank you so much for having me again. It was definitely a good experience on the last show, so part 2 should be tons of fun.
Yes.
Great. We'd love to hear the rest of, so for the audience, at the end of the episode I did with Ari, Melody couldn't make it. Ari has said at the end that there was more that she wanted to tell us about, so we invited her back for part 2.
Yes.
So it's all yours, Ari.
Yep, so the group I joined, it was, when I walked in there, they were teaching shamanism, like white shamanism, which is something that is prevalent. I don't know even what qualifies you on that level, but so he was claiming to be a shaman, a psychic. He did energy healings, and a lot of his modalities were based on he had died at a certain point in time, which I think I covered in the last episode. He died and had these visions, and he told us that God gave him these different energy therapies and these different modalities too that were better than all the others. He really spoke out against Reiki and things like that, and was like, no, use this. It was called flowing hands energy therapy. And it was
that his concept?
Yeah, that's what he called it. And then he had
flowing hands?
Yeah. And it was just, in his perception, it was sending energy and drawing energy. He would draw energy out of people. If they had cancer, you would just draw that energy out of them, and it would reduce the lump and things like that. So he had these really, really huge claims about his therapies.
You confirmed that he wasn't stealing that from somebody else? Have you Googled it to make sure that he didn't steal that idea from someone?
I don't know if he did or not on that therapy, but the other modality that he claimed was given to him was called what he called frequency vibrational shiatsu. And it was tuning fork therapy, which he actually, I'm pretty sure, I don't remember if he got sued for it, but he had some drama with a woman who claimed that she invented tuning fork therapy. And he was like, no, this frequency vibrational shiatsu is more in depth. And it's more of like a science, you know? Yeah. So he actually had one of the students write a book, which was like our training manual on frequency vibrational shiatsu. And I have this book, it was like something we all had to read in the group. And when I go back and read through it, I'm like, wow, like this is him speaking and having her writing, you know? And they had false credentials, like claimed to be doctor of energy medicine.
What was this book like? Did he publish this, or this was just like an internal manual that something he printed out on his computer?
Good
I
question.
think it was published, but it was like self-published. And they did sell it. Yeah, they did sell it.
Oh, really? Wow.
But it was more for us, for his students. And when you go through this manual, like there are whole sections on how it's so manipulative, because it will say you have power over your client. Like you are the one with the power and they are vulnerable. So you have to protect yourself from being accused of taking advantage of them or any like inappropriate sexual situations. Like how you protect yourself as the therapist from being accused of these things, and the way it's worded is so particular. You can see it's like, it's not saying don't take advantage, it's saying protect yourself from these accusations. And back then it's like I didn't even see that. Like this stuff didn't process in my mind. Now I'm looking at it, I'm like, wait a minute, like the way the language that he uses is
Right.
Well,
You're looking
it was
at it
written
from
by
different
another
eyes.
person, but this is his. Yeah, like this language is so manipulative.
Yeah.
Yeah, but again, it wasn't. He stole it.
Oh yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
I believe so, and because tuning fork therapy is something that's been around, and they use like the tuning forks and
Yeah, I've heard of it.
yeah, so it was his like spin on tuning fork therapy, and he claimed it was given to him by God. He had a direct link to God in his mind, and he was the only one who could hear God, and he heard God is what he would say. Like he would talk to God. So if you had a question, you ask him, and then he goes to God in his mind and gets your answer. And so like really it influenced you to not trust yourself and not listen to your own instincts and your own intuition. It was trust what he has to say, because he is connected to God and the true way, or the
history
reality.
or his childhood or how he was raised.
Yeah, I know a lot about his life.
Do you think that kind of influenced him at all?
I'm pretty sure that he had, from what I understand, is that he was always a psychic, right? And it was something seems the whole family kind of was aware of his claims of these kinds of things. And he really didn't want me to meet his family or like know them in any way. He didn't. He said they spread lies about him and things like that.
No, he was afraid that they would out him.
Yeah.
Right. But
Yeah.
what's interesting about his past is that he did practice Satanism in his life.
Wow.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, and he would tell us this, like, he's like, I used to be a Satanist. And it's crazy. So he was a police officer at one point in life. He was.
Wow.
So he wasn't
And
always blind.
yeah, he did a lot of
He was
things.
not born blind.
No. He lost his eyesight later, probably right before I met him.
Okay.
He started losing
So
his
just
vision
to clarify,
fully.
Ari shares that on the first episode that he was a blind man. So I should clarify that to the audience.
Yeah.
Can I ask? Just, it may seem obvious or not. Do you think the blindness was real, or was it medically? Did he go to the doctor, or do you think he was faking it? Or I'm just curious.
The blindness was real. is genetic, so there's like so many
Okay.
people in his family. It's a very rare genetic condition, but like
Okay.
his mom was blind and his brother was blind, and
Okay.
so that was definitely real, but it was something that he probably used to his advantage as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
You know, especially with me, like me taking care of him,
For sure.
you know, and yeah, like when I went to college, I remember a blind girl who navigated that campus effortlessly with her cane, and he would never do those things. He refused to use his cane. He needed me up 24/7 for him. Like if he needed a Coke, he would, you know, I have to be awake to go get his stuff, get his food, get his snacks, get his drinks, or whatever it was. And so I definitely think he used that to his advantage in keeping control of you. So yeah, he had a crazy, really weird life, really interesting stuff. I mean, but I think being a con man, like you do get these crazy opportunities and you're able to get your way into things.
Right.
But like with being a police officer, he claimed that he investigated satanic occult crimes. So he gave me, I actually have it. It's a training manual, and I don't know if it's real or not. Like I don't know, because it looks legitimate, and it's a manual where, I mean, I can't remember. It has some government agency on the front, like across the front of it, and it has all this information on Satanism and what these crimes look like. And he was very well educated in these crimes, like he was. And, you know, it was a really interesting to look at it in the present and, like, question that. Like, is this something that the government used, or is this something that he, like, made it look like, you
Right,
know, the
because you said
government
he was a
used
good
his,
con
his
man.
manual?
So he could have
Oh,
created this to look legit, and it may not have been.
yeah, it brings a lot of questions to the table. So I think, like, using the Satanist background really went into his teachings when we were all in the group, because then he's basically like, Satan is the enemy. And it's real, and it's something that we have to fight against because we're special, and that's like our purpose. And we would have people come to us who had hauntings. We had a paranormal investigation team, and so people would find us online and travel to us to have like exorcisms done and to clear out the demons or the spirits that were haunting them. And so they literally and in those situations is when you would see a lot of recruitment going on and trying to kind of get people on board with what he was doing. And so we did a lot of that stuff. I don't have the email anymore, but I remember we, like, a TV channel found us online and, like, offered us a paranormal investigation show.
Really?
Yeah. Like, he was good. He was that good where it looks legit, you know, and it's interesting, but we turned it down because that's when he was very sick.
Oh.
But yeah, we would do these like exorcisms for people. And I remember actively thinking during one of those exorcisms, like, if this isn't real, like, we look crazy. I remember thinking that because it was crazy.
Two things just popped into my head. Number one, over the past 10, 15 years, I'm, as a hobby, into paranormal stuff, and I used to watch ghost hunters on TV all the time. So for you to be offered a show makes sense because it was very big. So from Ghost Hunters spawned many spin-offs on different networks. Even today, on think Amazon Prime and Discovery and TLC, they have a bunch of still power. So that's not unusual. And I almost wish that you went through with it, because that would have been a great story just to hear that part of it.
That would have been nuts.
But the second question I have is, was any of the exorcisms, or so when they came to him with demon, like when they would bring a child or somebody that they thought was possessed?
We didn't have any of those. Well, I didn't. I think they had in the past before I joined the group situations like that where a child might be possessed or something. But really it was like it was just like people who would show us their evidence of like, I think there's a demon haunting our house or haunting us, and like show us like they would put the recorder down. Yeah,
so it wasn't like exorcisms.
You know, he'd be like, right, but he did an exorcism on me. Like,
of course.
Yeah, like when I first joined the group, he like convinced me that a demon was like influencing me, and I really believed him, you know. And one night we all went on a paranormal investigation. I had no idea that the whole team, the whole group of people that we went on this investigation with actually were in on this exorcism they were all planning to do on me without my knowledge. So they made it into like this big thing. We were out doing this investigation, and all of a sudden they're like, okay, we gotta go, everyone get in the car. And we all went back to where their business was, and they put me on the table, and they're like, they said they didn't want me to know because they didn't want the demon to know what they were doing, and they all like put their hands on me, you know, and it was a crazy moment. It was nuts. And so they made you think that they saved
that
you.
Was done purposely to get you to question yourself. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah.
Like to question your own reality and to chip away at your own integrity so that you would be more influenced by him.
A form of gaslighting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
and to make you like believe, right? And it's because it's so emotionally intense, the situation, when that happened. And then a few days later, one of the other students passed away who was there during this exorcism they did on me. And he's that fully to his advantage and being like, the demon killed him. He died saving your life.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a lot to carry.
Yeah, it's very intense, very manipulative.
So in any of the other like clients that so you said that people did come. So not exorcisms, but paranormal stuff. Like you said, there were houses that were haunted. Did you go on any of these?
They would usually come to us. We would go on all kinds of investigations, but usually it seemed like when people would contact us, we might have went to a house before though. Actually, now that I think about it. But it seemed like it was usually people coming to us, and we were like, the demon be like attached to them. Like not like the house, but it was like them.
Okay, so it was more about demons than ghosts.
Yeah. It was all about demons. You know, he used that fully to his advantage. I remember one morning I woke up to him like screaming for me, like yelling. And I'm like in a panic, like, why is he yelling for me? I ran out there and he's like, Lucifer is here right now. And you are sleeping. And he's like, you need to get up and like, you need to be more aware and you need to be ready to go in these moments. Like, put so much pressure on me to like sleep very lightly. Like, he did not ever let me sleep. He didn't. Like, he was, if I didn't get up, he was like, guess what just happened? And you were sleeping, So he used a lot of this. We would have like
brainwashing. It makes your brain more susceptible to the manipulation, for sure.
It is.
Sleep deprivation, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, you're not thinking straight when you are tired like that. And, he would have, like, meetings with the whole group. We would all, sit together, because we all lived together. Like, we had a house that had several studio apartments in it that we would rent out to our students. And so we always had everyone living together, and we would all get together every day. We ate dinner together, like that was the thing. And I was the one cooking. I cooked for everybody. That was like my job. I was like the mom of the house, that was like my title. And we would have these group meetings or these classes together where, he would be like, watch me summon Lucifer, and like, he made a deal with Lucifer, like, in front of everybody. It was like crazy stuff. And then it begs the question, like, do you still practice Satanism? Like, is that what's going on here? Because that's what currently has been going through my mind concerning that, is like, you are like making deals and you're showing that you are in control, and that he's like, don't ever do this. I can do it because I know how to deal with demons and I know how to deal with Satan. But, and he would like flaunt this power that he had to do these kinds of things because Lucifer was afraid of him.
So, just to clarify and understand, he used to be a Satanism. Satanist? I don't even know how to.
Satanist.
Right, okay. So he practiced Satanism, and that was way before you met him. Now you're with him, and he's telling you that he is talking to God in his dreams, and that one time he, I guess, passed away and did see God or something. How did he explain that he went from worshiping Satan to now believing and worshiping God, or his God, whatever? We don't know what God it was, but did that, anybody ever question that? Or of course you don't question the leader, but
I think he definitely had explained that at one point in time. I can't really remember. I know that I'm not really sure. I might have to kind of explore my memory with the different things that he would tell me.
You were probably
as to why he
at the time.
switched, because he didn't. Yeah, like he switched from like being a follower of Satan to, like what he said, investigating cult crimes and satanic crimes for the police department, and being like an advocate against Satanism. That's like what he had such an extreme switch at some point in time.
yeah, that's my point. It's quite a swing.
I have a question, which is kind of off topic, but were you in contact with any of your family members during this time? Or did he encourage you to disconnect from your family, like your parents or siblings or anybody that is in your family?
Yeah, that's a good question. So initially, no, he didn't at first. He really tried to like recruit everyone, kind of thing.
Tried to bring your family
so like
in.
actually, one of my brothers lived with us. I was my brother's power of attorney for a while, and he left and totally denounced the group and was like, I'm not coming back and learning that stuff. But so then he got excommunicated. And then my parents would come down and visit. My dad would come down and visit all the time. And then my dad ended up getting excommunicated when he didn't respect something that we had told him, and he like went against that. So I was encouraged to excommunicate him
Because he had a different opinion.
which was interesting. Yeah, and so it was one of those things where I remember like a year later, he's like, oh, I know you miss your dad. You can call him. Like giving me this permission to call my dad and stuff like
you
that.
needed
My
his
mom
permission.
never. Yeah, I did. And my mom was smart about the situation. She knew. So she knew not to do those things. She knew that she just had to let me figure this out on my own. And she approached it very well because she didn't get excommunicated or anything. She just simply let me be. She was supportive. And when I finally figured it out and talked to her about it, then she was like, oh, I know you were brainwashed. She's like, it's okay. Like, I know how that goes. And she knew exactly how to handle the situation without losing me as her
And
daughter.
I'm just going to put it out there because that's really good advice for anybody listening that might have a family member that's in a cult. Is the last thing you want to do is get it to where you are cut off from communication. Just try to be supportive, maybe drop little hints of critical thinking or doubts, but don't go at it like a bulldog, because then that's when they are going to cut you off and say, no more, you're done. You can't talk to them anymore, because then they become a
Exactly.
threat. Then they're a threat.
Exactly. I see that a lot of parents, like on Facebook groups and things like that, talking about this problem. And
Yes.
it's so hard to, not say anything, but there's nothing you can say to someone in that group.
No.
There's nothing you can say to them to change their mind. They have to kind of find out themselves.
Exactly.
Well, when your Twin Flames comes up in my mind, the documentaries, there's a lot of family that was interviewed, sisters and parents, and the whole concept of cutting you off from your family, or that idea of you can't communicate with them, is part of the brainwashing thing. It's all part of. I'm just for the folks listening. I had hip replacement, so my memory isn't my voice and brain aren't working together. But yeah, I'm just thinking of TFU, Twin Flames, and a lot of these cults will segregate you from your family because just like your dad, he was looking at it like this is not, and that's why he got excommunicated. So
right.
Yeah, they keep you in an echo
lots of
chamber.
Oh, go ahead, Ari. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was saying, it's a echo chamber, and you literally
Yes.
it's reinforced by the people around you, and if they don't reinforce these ideologies, then you cannot be exposed to that other way of thinking and these other perspectives.
Yep. And we have a lot of
They don't
people
want you
join the
thinking
Cult
for
Escape
yourself.
and Recovery group asking, how can I get my loved one out of this cult? I think they're in a cult. There is no cut and dry answer. Just like your mom inherently knew. How she knew that, I don't know. But you have to wait for them to come to that realization themselves. There is no magic word or answer that you can say to wake somebody up when they're in that situation, because they are under that influence. And until they see it, and there's no magic way to make them see it. I mean, you know that from your experience, Ari.
Oh yeah, nothing anyone could have said to me would have changed my mind, because a lot of people said stuff. So I just didn't care what they had to say. And but we had recruited some of my really good friends in the group as well, who came and lived with us, and they would also ended up getting excommunicated when they left the group. So it was like he never excommunicated anyone initially. It was once it got to that point where they were like
questioning him.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or they wanted to leave, or they were bringing us problems.
Or they saw him for who he was, and they didn't want them to have a conversation with you about that, because then it might wake you up.
Right. But thankfully, like, me and those friends, we are, because those are some of my best friends in life, and we're still friends to this day, and they know what happened, and but even knowing, they were still heavily influenced by his teachings.
Wow.
I have a question. So he got sick, and when he got sick, did the doctor say it was terminal? Did he know that he had limited time? Or was it not that kind of... I forget what he had and how he died.
He knew that he wouldn't last long because his heart... Well, he had so many health problems. He was a chain smoker. He had, emphysema. And then he literally had a very weak heart. And they told him he needed surgery on his heart. I can't remember what it's called when they implant into your heart.
Pacemaker.
The electrical device.
Oh, pacemaker.
Yeah, they said he needed a pacemaker. He wasn't going to make it. But he was very anti-medicine.
Weird.
And so, but actually he died from getting a staph infection in his arm.
Yeah, I remember that part of the story.
Oh.
Yeah. And didn't they send him home on hospice? So he knew?
No, he wasn't on hospice. He left. He went home, and I took care of him. I gave him his antibiotics. Okay. Oh, yeah. But even in the hospital, I had to take care of him in the hospital. He didn't let nurses do anything for him. He wanted me to do everything.
So my follow-up question to that, just to get the background of where his head was at. So he knew he was terminal. He knew he had limited time. Did you or him ever have discussion about when he dies, where does he go? Did he believe in a soul? Did he believe in afterlife? Did he believe that he would go to heaven? Or because a lot of what I've been hearing, a lot of cults sometimes talk about, I don't remember all of them, but when you die, that's it. I think Jehovah's Witnesses that
Yes.
you die, you don't go anywhere. So, where did he think he was going?
He believed in the afterlife. He did.
Okay.
And he he thought he was Jesus Christ. So
Oh,
if
of
that
course.
explains where he was going.
Okay.
Like he did. He
So
thought he
was
was
gonna rise again
Jesus,
in
and
3
he
days?
was going. Like he was gonna be everywhere. Like he was going. He could be here and there, and he always said that he would stay here with me. Basically, is what he would say. That he had a choice of what he could do, and so.
Okay. Here comes a very out of left field question, but I just feel like it's normal to ask this. So he passes on. You guys, he and you and the whole cult or organization did paranormal investigations. I know there were more demons than ghosts, but did you ever feel like he tried to reach out to you after he passed?
At the time, I think when he died, it was so much on my brain, I kind of lost it a little bit, and I would, set up the recorder or use a Ouija board or things like that. I was trying to actively communicate.
Okay.
So, no, though. I don't,
Okay. No, and that's fine. I'm just thinking that if my mind had been programmed that this man was Jesus and that after he dies, he said he's gonna take care of you or look after you. I think I would look for him. The reason I say that is because I've told this story on the other podcast way back. My mom was a devout Catholic, and I was raised Roman Catholic, but I left the church many years ago. But one day I had a conversation with my mom, and I said to her, when you die and you get to heaven, because they believe, the Catholics believe you go to heaven and blah, 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 the whole thing. I said, feel free to reach out to me and let me know that you're in heaven and that there is a heaven and yada, yada, yada. I've yet to hear from her, of course. So,
right.
It's I'm not really calling the Roman Catholic Church a cult, but the whole concept of you die and go to heaven, and I didn't believe that, but my mom always tried to get me to believe that, and I said, well, prove it to me. So when you die, and she passed in 2008, I think, and I have not heard from her. So
You're
I'm
still
just
waiting.
Right.
Still waiting. Exactly.
Yeah. I think he put his presence more he would be like, if anytime you see a red-tailed hawk, that's me kind of thing, things like that. So.
Oh, but see, he's
Which is hard to
implanting that.
disprove.
So you're going to see a bird.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Yep.
Well-
So he did that. He did that all the time.
I think the most interesting thing that I found about your story when you did your first interview with Andrew, and again, for anybody who hasn't listened, that's episode number 8, go listen to it. But I was wowed at, and I was at when you said that his death was not your aha moment. That was not when you awakened and were like, I was in a cult. It was years later that you actually, and it was a slow process for you to actually wake up and be aware and be able to retrospectively look back and say, oh my God, I was in a cult. Can you share a little bit of that and how that played out for you again? Because I think that part of your story is really interesting.
Yeah, I mean that was how heavy his influence was, but I was with him 24/7, you
Right.
know, and
for
all
how
the
many
tactics
years?
he was using, I was after I got out, it took me 5 years.
And how many
And
years
it
were
was
you
just
with him?
I was in the group like 4 years.
Okay, 4 years. So
So
it took you longer to figure out what it was even after you got out. That's interesting. So go
yeah.
ahead. I want you to share more about how you figured that out, Ari.
Yeah. So you start realizing right away things that weren't right. So right away, I mean, like, because going to the grocery store by myself, doing things by myself, being independent woman was really eye-opening at the time. So I definitely realized that, the world wasn't so dangerous and scary for me as he made it out to be, that I could go grocery shopping, I could do these things, and I had to work and support my family. So those are right away realizations. I had different realizations right away. And he told me I wasn't allowed to move on when he died, that like I couldn't have a romantic partner. And I realized pretty quickly that wasn't right either. So there were things I like kind of started slowly picking away at it, but I still had such a heavy, strong belief in his teachings. And I was also a massage therapist, and I was getting my yoga teacher certification. And when you are in the spiritual community like that, so it's like I never actually left the echo chamber. So if I told people I was married to a shaman or a psychic, they'd be like, that's awesome. Like they
Okay, so
didn't,
you were having some of it
you
reinforced.
never got the pushback.
Right.
Yeah, I never received, actually, when I told people about where I came from, people would come to me for help. People would keep asking me for help and ask me to do the exorcisms or things like that. And so over time, so yeah, I wasn't out of the echo chamber. So when I went to school, and I'm in the academic environment, okay, like total opposite.
Right.
That's when I was like, wait a minute. That's when I realized like I had to start questioning things and really think this stuff through. And I did wholeheartedly. And and also realizing that I didn't know what I really believed, what I stood for. I didn't know what my real values were. I didn't know any of that stuff until I went to school, because I had to sit down and have debates with people. And I'm like, oh, I don't even know. I don't know what I think about this topic. So I had to explore it. And, I realized pretty quick that I was in a cult for sure. And I started establishing my own perspective on life and my own values, my own beliefs, and things like that were mine, my thinking. So I think being in that echo chamber for so long, I needed the pushback from people. I needed to think.
Well, it's deprogramming.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just like in any cult or situation where your mind, like the echo chamber, you were programmed for. You might have been with them for 4 years, but you were, like you said, 24/7. So though during those 5 years, and you may have answered this in the first episode that we did you seek therapy or seek any kind of outside counseling?
No.
So you had to do this all on your own.
Yeah.
You deprogrammed yourself.
I did. Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Well, I believe philosophy is therapeutic. There's actually like a type of counseling that is all based in philosophical practices, which is really interesting. But I remember sitting with one of my professors. He was my professor for philosophy of authority, and talking with him about these things and about what I went through. And he was like, wow, sounds like you were in a cult. And I was like, yeah, no, I was. And, he told me, he was like, yeah, philosophy has been known to be like therapy for people. It's a different kind of way of doing it. So I think it was definitely the right way for me, because I actually am a very deep thinker.
Good.
It took me years to
And
use
so-
the word cult.
Really?
I didn't want to use that word for a long time because it has a connotation with it that I didn't. But once I finally was there, I'm like, yeah, it was a cult, and I just need to call it what it was.
Right. Language is important.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, words. Sure.
Yes.
So so for anybody that, again, as Melody said, listen to episode number 8, but if you're listening and you didn't, Ari is starting a podcast, or have you started it? I know you recorded some episodes.
I have not launched yet. I'm
Okay.
still pre-launch, but yep, I'm launching a podcast. It's called Disillusioned, and I mean, it's going to cover a lot of these topics, a lot of different stories, and how these ideologies influence people in like the worst ways, and how you reclaim your autonomy and how do you get out of these situations. And I will be recording an episode today, which will be exciting because it's going to focus on like some ex-evangelicals from a similar, because I was brought up in the evangelical belief system throughout my whole life up until I joined that cult. And so, it's really looking at how these ideologies influence people and how to be aware of it and how to get out of it and how to recover, and talk to people who have recovered from these things and found new ways to express themselves. And so, yep, it's very exciting.
So you, the podcast, what would be the goal of your podcast, or the theme?
Spreading awareness,
Okay.
recovery, autonomy, knowledge, the warning signs, and
So awareness
really,
about
I think
cults,
awareness, because
about cults and brainwashing and
cults in general.
Okay.
Yep, and how
Yeah,
it
basically
influences
what we're doing.
people's
Very
lives.
similar.
Yeah.
So were
Something
there
like that,
any
and
other
it's going to
extreme
be an
beliefs you
evolution.
wanted to share? Like anything else that you can think of that he believed that was really bizarre that you've left out in your first interview?
Yes. So we actually were hypnotherapists. And we partnered with the Mutual UFO Network, which MUFON.
I've heard of them. Yeah.
So they do research on UFO sightings
Yep.
and abductees. So they would send us abductees to have hypnotherapy done, to confirm or deny like whether or not they've been abducted, and like kind of help them to work through those things. So the alien stuff was a big part of things.
Wow.
Big part
Did
of
not
things.
know that. Interesting.
Yeah, he claimed to have direct connection with the aliens.
Of
and
course he did.
He was Jesus.
so, and he made us afraid, on that level. You're always living in fear no matter what. It's demons or aliens or whatever it is, the reptilians. He was very big into those conspiracies. And actually he did a hypnotherapy session on me where I didn't see anything. And I remember being in this hypnotic trance, not remembering. He's like, "What do you see?" I'm like, "I don't see anything." Probably because I've never been abducted, right? And it's like, he's like, "No, you're blindfolded. You're in a ship." And he started telling me
Feeding
what
you.
to see. He started telling me, my experience with these aliens who were experimenting on me. And I am very happy to say that was never put in my memory. Like, I knew it wasn't my memory because I didn't see it. I couldn't remember
Right.
any of that stuff. So, I unconsciously, like, did not believe him. And he
So
was
it's
trying
something
to
you never
implant, like, these
absorbed.
memories in my mind. I didn't. And I watched him do that to a lot of students. I watched him put memories in their minds and under hypnosis, where he would be like telling you your past life. You're not telling him. He's telling you, and he would influence it. And I believe that was a very heavy manipulation tactic he would use, was hypnosis. And trying to implant memories into your brain. I mean, I learned in psychology that is very much doable even without hypnosis.
And I assume
That,
you didn't
you know-
realize exactly what he was doing at the time. This is retrospect. You're looking back and saying that's what he was doing, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't know at the time, but I knew that those memories never went into my brain. Even back then, I knew that. I'd play
Right.
along, but I knew that I didn't remember anything that he was saying to me. So I'm glad too, because I had other people who were victim of him didn't have that experience and, still remember. They have these memories of their past life, and I don't believe those were real memories.
Can you give us an example of what type of memory he would suggest that you had, or it would vary from person to person, or what did he try on you?
Everyone was different. He really tried to get me to remember a past life with him, being Mary Magdalene.
Oh, okay.
So he yeah, he did. He was like, "You are Mary Magdalene. Like, you are my counterpart."
Oh, gosh.
And he would, my first night with him, when we moved away, the first night I spent with him, he was doing hypnosis on me. And he was like trying to put these memories. What color of dress were you wearing? How did we meet? It was so Aladdin too. It was like the story of Aladdin is what the story that he was feeding me. It was like, you were stealing at the
this
market.
sounds familiar. This sounds like a Disney story.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, it was, and that's what it made me think of. But it was never my memory, and I didn't
Right.
remember. And I remember even that night when he was doing that, I still didn't remember. I was like, I don't see. I'm sure I could have said any color of dress, and he'd been like, yes, that's it. You're remembering.
Yeah.
Right.
And then the next day he's telling all the students who were traveling with us to Tennessee, like, oh, she remembers our past life. And
you're like, no, I don't.
did not remember anything, and it was just, it's all programming. It's crazy how deep this stuff goes.
I'm sure I asked you this in episode 8, and I do not remember. Was he into any psychedelic drugs?
No.
No.
He was very anti-psychedelics. He was
Wow.
anti-substances in general. We were not allowed to do any drugs,
Including alcohol.
including alcohol. Well, at first, he didn't drink. He did not drink at all. And he was very,
Wow.
very sober. But at first, he kind of let us, like, drink and stuff. But as time went on, he got more strict about drinking. But no marijuana, no psychedelics. He taught us that there's a way to reach that state of mind without psychedelics, and that's what he was teaching us. He was very much against any, like, mind-altering or mind-opening substances.
That's actually kind of
Well,
surprising.
he was clearly, yeah. Well, but he was clearly, as if he was on psychedelics. That's why I asked, because it sounds like he was on a trip, like this big trip.
I'm with you. It sounds. I'm a little surprised he wasn't on something. Maybe he was, and you didn't know.
And he,
Oh, you would know,
I mean,
though.
it does sound, but when he spoke, he was very much, sounded very grounded and very with it. And I don't think that I think doing substances, like, for the leader would be a no-no. Because you want to be
Right.
with it. You want to be in control of everything. So,
You're right, because even
I
I
think-
just watched a special on Charles Manson, and they said that at first he would do psychedelics with his followers, but as time went on, he would continue giving them more and more, and he would take less and less because he wanted to be of sound mind, because he wanted to control the group.
Right.
Yep, and he would give them those visions. Of the memories of him being Charles Manson being Jesus Christ while they're
Oh.
tripping. So then they have this, like,
Yes,
visual.
exactly. Very
And-
similar to your situation.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think that in place of psychedelics, it was hypnosis and, like,
Oh,
sleep
okay.
deprivation and things like that. So it was like a different way of approaching that
It
mind
was
altered state.
his own flavor. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's all the same stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Yeah, actually, I think
gotta be careful
his
with
way is a little harder because I think when people are under the influence, they're probably easier to manipulate and easier to convince of things. So I think he did it a little bit the harder way.
Right. Yeah, it is interesting what he did. But he was successful, but you know, towards the end when his health was declining, he wasn't as sharp and he was losing followers. He was losing followers. He was having a hard time holding on to followers. I think at the end there was just a few of us left.
By any chance, have you ever had or gotten in touch with any of his other ex-wives or mothers of his other children, or talked to anybody else who was in a relationship with him to find out if this was kind of really his MO across the board?
I have been in contact with his kids. So I've heard a lot of stuff on that level. He was married when I met him.
Oh.
He was married and she was a follower. So she left the group. I mean, he divorced her and then he married me.
Oh, okay.
But she stayed with us. She did. She stayed with us at first, but then eventually she realized she was what she was in and she left. And I have actually not talked to her at all, but I know that she was well aware of what was going on, and she did reach out to my mom and talk to my mom about some stuff, but I have yet to contact anyone from the group at this point in time. I'm in contact with some people, but
is because I talk about how an abusive relationship can kind of be like a cult of one. And I wondered if he kind of ran his previous relationships or marriages, whatever he had previous to doing this with a group, if he was doing this to individuals on a small scale. And just by the time he met you, he had perfected it to doing it to multiple people at a time.
Oh, I'm sure he did. I mean, he had never had anything good to say about his ex-wives, and they all cheated on him, and like who knows what the reality of it all is, but I'm sure he did. He was very controlling. He was very, very controlling. Like I'm sure not anything new for a person like that.
Right.
Well, listening to you for now almost 2 hours, it's clear that he was a genius. He probably had a very high IQ, but as we know, there are throughout history many of the psychopaths in history were very genius or very intelligent. If you had to put a diagnosis on him psychologically, what would you say he had? Because he clearly had something: schizophrenia, neurosis of some sort. Would you care to speculate?
I would say no to the schizophrenia. He was very coherent, very grounded, very not scattered speech, nothing like that. He was a sociopath. That's a sociopath.
Okay.
That's someone who does not care. Like, he would manipulate people very much willingly, very much aware. And I think he was so aware of what he was doing.
Oh, yeah.
That's full-on awareness. It was so different than like someone who's schizophrenic and has like delusions of grandeur. Like, it was different. He was more like, I'm gonna make my life easy. I'm blind. People are gonna take care of me. They're gonna pay my rent. Like,
Would you put him into the narcissistic spectrum?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I'd say definitely narcissism. On that level, yeah. Like, I don't know if he really believed he was Jesus. And that's what's tough about these things. It's like, I don't know what your real beliefs about yourself are. But I know what he said to everyone. But, I almost lean towards the idea that perhaps he was aware that he was lying, like that he maybe knew that he wasn't Jesus and he was just like conning people.
So he was kind of a con artist too then.
Oh yeah, he was. He definitely was. So he just seemed too aware and too grounded and too coherent.
What do you know anything about borderline
Yes.
personality?
And
Maybe he had a touch of that.
I didn't see any. Yeah, I know about that. I didn't see things like that. He was never
Yeah.
emotional or anything.
Okay.
You
I'm
know.
familiar with BPD, and I don't think. Oh, there could be elements of BPD. I do. They cross over, but I don't
Right.
think he was BPD or
Nice.
fully. But
Too much in
he
control.
clearly had. He was on a spectrum of sorts.
Yeah.
Maybe a unique one.
Maybe.
Yeah.
So
He was a highly intelligent person, and he would use his logic. He would make his teachings very logical to you. He didn't want you using logic, but you want to listen to his logic.
If you use logic, you would think your way out of this
Yeah.
cult.
Right.
Didn't
Like,
want
he would
that,
put
so.
it in a way like, look at this science and look at this or look at that and that. But since he discouraged you critically thinking and you using logic, you had to depend on his logic. And he would make things make sense. He was a master of language. Like, he knew how to use language to manipulate people.
Did he speak any other language?
Oh, no.
Okay.
No.
Is there anything else
He's
about
definitely
your
a master
experience or
manipulator.
story or him that you would like to share with the audience?
You know, it's crazy because, like, walking into that situation, I mean, I think I was pretty naive because of my evangelical upbringing and things like that, but
And you were young.
I was young. But, like, there's these people who are so good at this stuff. And I have seen documentaries on con artists. Like, the con artist documentaries remind me more of him than cult leader documentaries.
Oh.
And when I watch what those people went through, and they're like people who had their doctorates.
Yeah.
They're people who went to medical school and they were conned. Like, you have to be so aware of language and how these people are so good at putting their words together and making it seem so true. And there's so much complexity in their teachings, and I think it's just so important to be aware that like, this stuff can happen to anybody. I mean, it can. Yes. And when you have somebody offering you all the answers and all this awareness and the way, like, that is when you need to question things, because there's no set way to do life. Like, that's a con, or that's manipulation. And to not trust your instincts too, not think for yourself. Like, people who say, don't do this, or don't think this way, think this way. Like, these are all red flags that he used, and I see it time and time again from all kinds of people using this kind of manipulation where you ignore your own intuition, your own thinking, because their way, they claim, is better, the right way. So, it is important to realize that this is something that can happen to so many really, really smart people.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Because those people are highly intelligent as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
Very, very smart individuals.
And they know how to gain other people's
Okay,
trust.
Ari. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's master manipulation, everything we talked about, narcissistic, sociopath, all of that wrapped into one nice little ball, and
Yep.
he knew how to use all of and like you said, the language. So,
Yep.
all right, we have to wrap this up. But Ari, I would first of all want to wish you success on your podcast.
Yes.
And I'd like to extend another invite. So once your podcast is launched and you have a couple of episodes under your belt, I would like to invite you back. Tell us how it's going, and love to hear maybe do a part 3. How Ari's life is going after because I think this podcast is going to help you, like it did me. I launched my podcast after a relationship which I needed help to get through. I think this is a great way. Although you said philosophy was a great way to heal, I think that you're going to find this podcast is going to help you tremendously.
Oh, I agree with you 100%. Absolutely. I do appreciate that, and I do look forward to the launch of this podcast. I've been working hard to get to that point, and it's a lot that goes into starting a podcast. There's so much,
yes.
and so it's been ongoing, but I'm like literally on the cusp of launching, and I'm really excited to take
and
those
Ari,
steps
can you
forward.
also
So
share
I will
with the
definitely
audience
keep you
what other
updated.
platforms people can find you on other than your podcast?
Yep. Right now I am I have Intrinsic Agency on Instagram, which is a resource center that I will be starting for survivors to help them to regain their autonomy and their sense of identity after coercive control experiences. And then I am on TikTok, Disillusioned8, and that is disillusion with an A, not an I.
Okay.
And
we'll put all this in the show notes.
Yep. So there will be more though as well. I'm currently working on my website, but I'm the one building it, so it's a process. But so when I get my website launched and everything launched, I'll send you guys all that information, and I'll have all that information on my social media platforms. So
great. Ari, I can't thank you enough and I'm glad you did come back from part 2. You said you had more to share, and boy, did you.
Yes, yes, thank you. Thank you. It was very interesting. Got to do a little deeper dive in this guy. Figure out what he's about.
Thank you so much for having me.
Our pleasure. And
yes.
And for those listening, we do have a couple of Facebook groups. Cultimatum is one, and Melody, your group is
Cult Escape and Recovery.
And I think Ari, you are in that group as well, I believe. Yep. Again, thank you for stopping by and telling your story in more depth this time. And we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks again, Ari.
Thank you so much.
We want to thank Ari so much for coming on the show again and going more in depth into her story. I was happy to be there with Andrew this time because I was busy the last time Andrew interviewed her, so I wasn't part of that interview. But boy, she has got a very interesting, very unique story. It goes into all these different avenues and facets. It's just kind of, you're going all over the place. I mean, it certainly is captivating, and it was worth having her back on to share more of her story.
I agree 100%, and I'm glad you were there for this. Now I know what she meant. So at the end of episode 8, when she and I recorded, she did say to me, I didn't feel like I got to explain or give more details about the cult she was in and the man she was married to. So that's why we invited her back for part 2, and I'm glad we did, because wow.
Yes.
There was some stuff there that I did not know about. I find it amazing, these people like him. I don't know why I'm shocked that they exist, but it's just amazing that they can create this kind of atmosphere where people flock and follow. And this is what we're doing. Cults do that.
Yes, and it's
anyway.
Interesting.
Shut me up because I'll keep rambling.
Oh, it is interesting, and I do think that, and I mentioned this in the interview about, I think this is something that people can perfect over time, and I think some of it might even be learned as young as childhood. It goes back to childhood, because I'm going to mention again, I would just watch this documentary or this series on Charles Manson, and they talked about his childhood, how he had gotten a group of girls back in childhood to beat up some of his bullies for him. And it was a group of girls. And then when they all got in trouble, he denied that he had anything to do with it. So, and he was 5 years old at this time. So he had kind of was perfecting this from childhood and figured out it worked. It worked, and he got them to do his bidding for him. And it's just really interesting.
And I'm glad you saw that or the documentary, because you did ask her if she knew anything about his childhood. Yes. There's got to be something in his childhood.
That's what I'm thinking.
That precipitated this. Yeah.
Well, but even just the fact that it sounded like his family members, believed that he was psychic and that he had these abilities, and maybe it inflated his ego from a very young age, and he just went with that.
His family, I'm never speak ill of the dead, but apparently the family had some issues. Everybody was blind. Everybody was a psychic. It just seemed like it was probably one big dysfunctional family.
Very possibly. We're going to, as always, we ask that you, if you want to show your support for our show, you can do that by rating our show on either Apple or Spotify. You can also follow us, share our episodes, and continue listening to all the latest episodes.
You can also show your support by joining our Facebook community under the name Cultimatum. If you'd like to share your story with us, you can email us at cultimatumpodcast@gmail.com.
And as an ex-cult member, you can find more support at the Cult Escape and Recovery Facebook group.
If you'd like to hear more of me, you can find me on my other podcast, Anonymous Andrew Podcast, Life and the Choices We Make. And Melody, we'll see you next week.
Yes, thanks everyone for listening.